What's up, everybody? I'm Bryce, and I'm here with Rick. This obviously is some shit we like, and we are having a special guest today that we are interviewing. We are here with Gregory Kasunich, also known as Gregory John Michael Kasunich. I got that all correct. Is that right?
You got it. Yeah, all names.
Okay, so we are joined by Gregory. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you guys?
We're doing well. We're hanging in there, social distancing, keeping apart. That's why we're doing this podcast over Skype. Rick, this is the first time we've done this. Geez, how long have
Oh wow, you're right.
Strictly over Skype, and then we started meeting and doing video and doing all this stuff. So Rick, I don't think we've done it in this fashion for a long time. Probably eight. It's been a while.
Well, we've been doing this for 8 years, but yeah, I think the last time was probably I don't even know.
Yeah.
But it's kind of nice because we don't have to dress up or anything.
All right, Rick, we don't need to know what you're wearing right now. It's cool. Let's leave it to the imagination. So, Rick, I guess, you just actually told me about this yesterday, so why don't you tell me a little bit about how this all came together?
So, yeah, Ryan sent me a text.
Was Ryan O'Leary, for everybody listening?
Yeah, sure. Ryan O'Leary, he's been on the show many times. Sent me a text that you saw one of our videos, the Green Day video, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And then he also told me that you'd be pretty cool to talk to, so I said, why not? If you're cool with Ryan, cool with us.
Let's hope I live up to it. Yeah, Ryan's a really cool guy. Yeah, we met on the film festival circuit in San Antonio, and have stayed in touch since then. And then I ran into him again in Cincinnati at this independent film festival.
Oh, really?
So I've seen his short a few times, and he's seen a couple pieces of my work. And I just finished a new music video and we can talk a little bit more about this if you guys want, but it's like an 80s style influenced video that we released on VHS. And told him about it, and he was like, well, you should talk to these guys. So that's how we all got together.
Yeah, it's really funny because the way that we met Ryan was through this podcast, and it was we reviewed. He did a short for Why the Last Man, and we reviewed it on the show. And he found it, and he emailed us, right, Rick? Is that what happened?
That's correct.
He emailed us, and we got him on the show, and then we just kind of kept communicating with him. And then when he was working on his feature, The Backseat, Rick decided just to go out there and, help and to meet him or whatever. And we just thought it was funny at the time. It's like, dude, you really want to go out there? You've never met this guy before. Like, he might murder you. Like, this is just somebody we met on the internet. But it's just funny, like, how many people that we've met and now are pretty close friends with just through doing this podcast. Yeah,
that's really cool. I feel like a lot of podcasters get the opportunity to meet people. It's it's a literal conversation starter, right? Like you get to build these relationships because you have this platform, and I think it's really important, especially now that we're all quarantined.
Yeah,
being able to reach out across the internet is so important.
Yeah, for sure. And we always talk about too. It's funny, like, Mike, who normally does this with us, he's not here, but we hang out, and we're friends and stuff. And sometimes, like, we'll barely be interacting or talking, but then as soon as we hit record and the microphone's in front of us, we start having these conversations that we feel like we wouldn't be having otherwise. So it's interesting, like, how a podcaster doing something like this brings out the conversation in people.
Absolutely. It's a lot of times, young filmmakers will ask, like, oh, what do I do? And where do I find stories? And I'm like, just start talking to people, and if that means starting a podcast, or if that means, creating a place or a platform, whether it be like a board game night or something, whatever, meet people, talk, find stories, share stories. I think it's a way to just kind of come up with ideas.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Ryan, we definitely appreciate you bringing Gregory to us.
Yeah. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah. I think because I was talking to him last night. I believe you also met the world famous Daniel Herman. Is that name familiar to you as well?
Very familiar.
Okay. We're very familiar with Mr. Dan Herman as well. He's a very interesting character.
He's a gem. Yeah.
I love him. He is a gem for sure. So we run in similar circles, I guess.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I think Dan has been at the film festivals that Ryan was at, and we got to chat, and really, really interesting, fun guy.
Yeah, Ryan likes to lovingly refer to him as his son. So.
So yeah, like going to film festivals, that's always pretty fun because like how you were kind of saying earlier, like I've been to a few of them with Ryan, and it is cool to just go around and just like talk to people and and just connect with people, kind of like how you were just talking about earlier with the podcast and yeah. So with your video, like how many festivals have you been to already?
Man, I wish I had the number in front of me. It's been a lot. Like I hadn't. Yeah, I've been making films and music videos and commercials and stuff for years, but I had never really gone down the road of the film festival circuit. And for whatever reason, I just started. I started with a music video and started submitting that around and getting in, and went to a few. And it's kind of amazing. If you've been to a few, you had this same experience where some of them are absolutely incredible and well produced, and there's great programs and meet and greets and things like that, and some of them aren't that. And they're a little bit kind of they're a little less produced, and but you end up meeting really interesting people no matter what. And so we've taken a couple projects, a short film, a couple music videos around to East Coast, Oklahoma, San Antonio, California. Yeah, so we've been around a little bit, which is fun.
Yeah, it's really cool the travel that it allows you to do. Like I know Ryan was just touring his short, and he was everywhere. he
was just in London or something.
Yeah, he was in London. He was in I believe Italy too, right? Yeah, he was there.
I don't think he made it.
Did they not go? No, yeah, they didn't go. They went to Paris. Italy didn't happen. That's right, but. London, Paris, and he was all over the States, and it's crazy. Like I think I don't remember what it was, but he was just saying like how many flights and how much travel he was doing like in a 2-month period. So that's always fun too, because I think travel is always a really good experience, and it's cool that film festivals, doing that allows you to have that freedom to travel and meet people and stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, you can, pick up get in your car and drive somewhere and go to a little town, but having a reason to go there and knowing that there's a community waiting for you there is so important and, encourages you to go. I mean, Woodward, Oklahoma, where the Twister Alley Film Festival is an hour away from any airport. So you fly into Oklahoma City and you get on a shuttle, and it almost feels like summer camp, right? Where like all these filmmakers who don't know each other are on a bus and they're like, oh, hi. And by the time the bus arrives, you're all friends and you're ready to start this 4-day run with. Yeah, it's really cool.
It's really cool, the camaraderie and stuff that's involved. The last, unless Rick, you've been to one since, I don't think you have, but the last film festival we went to was the one that's out in Laughlin. I'm blanking. I think it's just called the Laughlin Film Festival, but sort of a similar experience, just because you're in Laughlin. Laughlin's not very big. It's it's basically not Las Vegas, but it's like Vegas kind of. And so everyone that was in town was basically there for the film festival. So, everywhere you're going, you're meeting other people that are there. And yeah, that is kind of cool. Because Laughlin, I think you could fly in there, but for the most part, I think people just drive it, or they fly into Vegas and drive from there. So it's just kind of like once you're there, and that's your little oasis for the next few days during the festival.
Yeah, I mean, the incredible thing about Woodward, which, even if I went to Oklahoma, I don't know if I would drive the hour to Woodward. It's a one-horse town in the best way. It's very small and with one main strip, and it's all these sort of low-slung brick buildings from the 1800s. Mm-hmm. And when we were there, they have this one theater, which has this beautiful marquee. It almost felt like something like if you've seen the Majestic, it almost felt like that kind of building. And I guess 20, 30 years ago, a tornado came through the town and knocked out the electricity in this building and destroyed some of the foundation and some of the infrastructure. And so that marquee, which is this centerpiece to this one street, has been dark for 30-some years. And because of this film festival, slowly they've been getting some attention. And this girl who I think was working in the, some local government office started a Kickstarter or a GoFundMe, and they were able to sort of raise the funds and rebuild it. And they waited until this festival, this was last year, to relight it. And they brought out the marching band, and they brought out people who told stories about how they had their first kiss in the upper balcony. And then they lit it up, and it was literally like something out of a movie. And that this little film festival could bring this town together and relight this marquee. It was just beautiful.
That's amazing. It just
Wow.
returned life back to the town. That's really cool.
That's a great
Yeah.
one. Yeah, the last film festival I actually went to was the Sherman Oaks Film Festival with Ryan.
That's right. Yeah.
And that was a small festival too. I mean, it is LA, but I mean, like the festival itself, like there wasn't really that many people, but it was I think they blocked it out in like the most perfect way, so everyone had enough time to have like a Q&A and watch their short or film.
What was the venue? Because I live right down the road.
Oh, I don't remember the venue. Yeah, not off the top of my head. I don't remember what venue it was, but yeah, it was pretty cool. It was a good time, and but yeah, that was the last one I went to.
Yeah, it's really kind of sad because of this situation, this global pandemic, that all these festivals are shutting down or skipping the year. And some are, going online and providing those films to a wider audience, which is pretty cool. Like, I think South by did that.
Yeah.
So there's in some ways it's getting more exposure, and then in other ways, I can't even I haven't been accepted into South by, and if I had gotten in and then it got canceled, it would be heartbreaking. It's such a prestigious festival. So I feel really bad for those filmmakers.
Yeah, for sure. That had to have been definitely a big disappointment. I think I looked the Whitefire Theater. Does that sound familiar? That might have been where it was. On the Sherman Oaks Film Festival site.
That could be, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's what it says.
I'll submit to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the people there were really nice. Yeah, what do you think about that? Everything going online like that with the film festival with South by? Like,
I mean, I'm torn about it because I know that there was a pushback from filmmakers, right? And I don't know exactly what was the cause behind that, but I think, again, in some ways it's incredible because you're expanding this audience. Like how much is it pass to South by? Hundreds of dollars, right?
Something like that.
Sure.
Yeah, and it's a great festival, but to go there and to fly in and by the time you're done, you're spending nearly $1,000, and to be able to get access to these amazing short films and content that you wouldn't be able to see anywhere else, or you wouldn't be able to see for years until they're released or developed or whatever, is really, really, really cool. And I think that type of exposure is great for filmmakers. At the same time, the fact that it's completely free, though going to a bigger audience, like those filmmakers aren't seeing any sort of return from that.
Mm-hmm.
But usually in a film festival, you don't. Like the money goes to the festival.
Right.
So I'm curious what the issue is with filmmakers. Do you have any insight there or any thoughts about it?
The first thing that pops out to me, not to interject, Rick, but we were just talking about the social aspect of it. Like we were talking about the social part of this, like starting this whole thing, this podcast out. And, like it's cool that it's widely available and maybe you're reaching a wider audience, but like you're completely eliminating, the possibility of meeting people and
experience,
I guess networking and so I think you lose that element of it for sure. And that's definitely, I think, a big thing for a lot of people going to these festivals, because the hope is that they're, meeting somebody and maybe, getting more attention to their project, whether it's through the screening or through somebody that they meet that happened to see it. So, I don't know. I think that's definitely probably a big thing for a lot of people that's missing from it.
Yeah. I mean, again, with those bigger fests too, like you just get so much exposure, and the panels and, the people you meet, it's such an important part of the process and the experience.
Yeah. It kind of has its pros and cons, but at the same time, it's like, I think going to the actual festival is the better part of it because of all the people you get to meet.
Yeah. And also just this idea of like sitting down and giving your full attention to something.
Mm-hmm. I'm
totally guilty of going to like Short of the Week or these different film, platforms and having them sort of on a tab in the background as I'm working on something else and not getting my full attention to it. And, when you're at a film festival, not only are you completely engaged with what's happening on the screen, but then immediately after, those people get up and stand in front of you and you connect them with their work. And then that, there's usually, you know, a party or something where you can talk with them. And so you don't want to be the guy who's like, well, I was on my phone during yours, you know, or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, there's a respectfulness and there's an engagement that just doesn't happen when something's on the internet. And I think that so many filmmakers feel like, man, you know, at least if I've screened it for an audience that got to watch it, that feels like a complete thing, like I'm done, you know, versus when you just put something on the internet, you don't necessarily get that feedback and that feeling of completion.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a disconnect between, you know, seeing people in front of you that you can interact with versus like talking to, like, let's say like a Twitch chat or something, or whatever you're streaming on, you know, like maybe that's cool. Like, oh, there's X amount of people here. That's neat. But at the same time, like, it's still just like a wall of text, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which one has been one of your, not to make it pick, but like one of your best experiences as far as film festivals? Because you've been to a few of them, you said.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, I don't know, off the top of my head, top 3 might be Sedona, which again, Ryan only.
Yeah.
Ryan seemed to really love, like, he thought
he
Sedona
loved
was
it.
beautiful. He'd never been, so he was really, like, he really enjoyed that area quite a bit.
I had never been. I mean, I was in Sedona as a young kid, you know, and then going back as an adult, it's first off, it's an absolutely gorgeous setting. You just, you know, you can't ask for visually a better place to have a festival. 2, everybody comes out. You know, we had our only sold out screenings ever for a film festival run during Sedona, which is incredible that you've got a full packed audience and they're all engaged and they're all asking questions. And then they just, you know, they take care of the filmmakers. You know, they provide some food and some lodging and very, like, strangely, I was there and one of the producers and writers from Game of Thrones was there.
Oh, wow.
So they're bringing in, I guess it's just close enough to Los Angeles that people are like, yeah, I'll fly in, you know, or drive.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I was going to say it probably has a little bit to do with the proximity to LA and stuff, because I feel like Laughlin was pretty crowded too. And like, that's close enough to where I feel like that makes sense. So for Sedona also.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know Ryan, at one point, he was just kind of like, I guess like he was there alone for a little bit, and he's like, I'm kind of going crazy. I'm bored. Like, what are you up to these next few days? And, you know, he finally got around that he was trying to get me to come out there, and it's like, yeah, dude, I don't know if I could just drop what I'm doing and do the 8-hour drive or whatever it is to go to Sedona, but I mean, that's cool. Like, I'm sure just hang in there. But yeah, I think it is close enough to have some of these people from Hollywood come out, so I'm sure that was a cool experience.
It was very cool, and I went up to him afterward, and, you know, he was kind of like a little resistant. Like, he was very kind and gregarious and stuff, but I could tell it was like, okay, you know, I don't necessarily want to talk to some person just coming up to me. And we got to talking, and it turns out that, like, you know, my agent is, you know, knows that his assistant, and they know the same producers that I'm friends with, and all of a sudden the tone shifted completely, and he's like, oh, you should come and check out the writer's room that I'm doing, you know. And it's like,
wait, oh, so you're legit, I can talk to you now.
Yeah, I made this very specific Los Angeles connection in my industry in Sedona, you know, like, and had I not gone and had I not been a part of that, had they not made the space and invited him there, like, that wouldn't have happened. So it's very cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So that's up there. And then I did enjoy Independent. I mean, it's a young festival, but they did such a great job. I got to teach a master class there. So just, you know, being, you know, engaging with people that way was really, really cool. And then, yeah, Twister Alley, because of that whole marquee experience, was so memorable. So yeah, it's not always the biggest ones. I went to Mammoth, which is a very well-produced festival. You know, there was a bowling competition with Dennis Rodman and Tony Hawk, and like they draw people. But for some reason, like I didn't have the same sort of engagement and same experience there as I did at some of these smaller festivals. So
interesting.
Yeah. That's not to knock it. I think it's a wonderful fest. You know, I just think it's really about, you know, I don't know why Ryan was so bored. I mean, there's so much to do.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Ryan is very, like, he's specific, I guess, in what he wants and needs. And I don't know that he was bored. I think he was just in wherever he was, I guess, like, he didn't have reception. I think he even said his Wi-Fi was like hit and miss. So I just think he was just starting to go insane. And I think his, what's his name? But his producer, I'm forgetting his name.
Anthony
Padoni. Yeah, I think he was supposed to be there and he didn't. And it just turned into this whole thing. But otherwise, I know he really loved that festival. I think it was one of his favorites, and just I think enjoyed the scenery as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I would highly recommend it to anybody. So
Yeah.
Yeah, he told me like I have to go with them next time, so I guess I'll be going there.
they do a great job, and you know, again, and the films also are all high quality, and it was just I saw this documentary about stunt women, and I just saw so many great things that came out of there. And again, you know, those for the filmmakers, they're all free, and they give you 2 tickets, and it's great. Yeah, really, really good.
So Greg, you've been doing this. I mean, obviously, like I read up on you a little bit. I internet stalked you a bit. not so much that, but I read some stuff. So this is something that you've really been interested in since you were a kid, filmmaking.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. It's I mean, I can't remember exactly when I started doing it, but even in high school, I was, you know, part of like the AV club and did all that sort of thing. And I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and at the time, I think they've actually closed down now, which is so sad. But at the time, they had a school called Pittsburgh Filmmakers, which I know that I think they worked with Pitt. And while I was still in high school, I applied for an apprenticeship program and got it, and was able to, like 2 days out of the week, leave school and go downtown to Pittsburgh and learn, like shoot on 8mm film and develop it by hand and start splicing and cutting it. And that was such an incredible experience where I was like, you know, because at that time, right, you know, when I was in high school, it was video cameras and, you know, Super 8 and things like that. You know, we were still shooting some stuff on VHS even. And video is great, and it's a great way to learn, but it's so different than filmmaking. Mm-hmm. And so getting that discipline and getting that, you know, that level of education so early on was amazing. And then I ended up going to Temple University in Philadelphia for film and got the opportunity. It was like sort of just at the tail end of when they were still teaching film. So my first films were shot on 16mm. And then by the time I graduated, you know, everything was trending towards like red and, you know, digital cinema.
That's really cool, man. I think it's cool, like when people at a young age kind of like really just have like, they know what they want to do and they're able to go down that path. And I mean, you're, you know, sounds like you're living your dream right now for sure.
Yeah, it's people, you know, you go to these film festivals and they're like, so what do you want to do? And you're like, oh, I'm doing it. You know, I'm not doing it to the level I want to be doing it, obviously.
Of course.
Directing, you know, television and having a feature that's you know, being distributed and all, you know, all those things. But mm-hmm. to the degree, you know, like that is my day job. Every day I wake up and I, you know, push the ball forward on whether they're independent projects or I'm being hired by a company to go shoot a commercial or something like that. I am doing it. So that's kind of a victory in and of itself. But, you know, that comes with its pros and cons and highs and lows. And, you know, I can talk more about that if you want. But yeah, it's nice to be able to say, like, that's what I do for a living.
Yeah, well, we can talk about anything. Like when we do this stuff, we just like to kind of see where the conversation guides us. So I don't know, very, very loose format.
Yeah.
But I think it's cool. So you have writing credits too, obviously. Like, is there something you lean more towards? Like, do you appreciate, like, do you like writing? Do you just like the filmmaking part of it more? Like or is it a combination of the two?
It's I mean, I think that's how I got into filmmaking, was through writing, you know, as a younger person writing short stories. And, you know, I was involved in the theater group and I was involved in band, and, you know, I was always sort of in this like kind of performing. And so as a musician, you start learning how to put together, you know, a song or some structure, and you're interested, you know, I got interested in movie soundtracks. And when you're in the theater department, you see that it's people building sets and acting. And then if I'm sitting there writing these little stories and then I realize, okay, well, I just have to stick a camera in front of it, then you can put all these pieces together. Mm-hmm. And I'm not the first person to say this, but one thing I love about filmmaking is that you can, it basically is one of those like umbrella arts that includes so many different disciplines. You have costuming, you have sound design and music, and you've got sculpture, and you've got, you know, all of these elements that come together to make a film. And yeah, obviously writing and things like that. So when you make a film, you incorporate all of those pieces, and that's kind of when I was like, you know what, I don't want to be on the stage, and I don't want to be playing the music. There are people who are much better at that than I am. But the one thing I can do is put a story on paper and then, you know, pull a team together to shoot that thing.
Very cool.
Yeah, and it's interesting because even though I've been writing over the years, I made a like an independent feature when I was still in college, and I haven't really made much narrative where been doing a lot of commercials and, like I said, music videos and things like that are more about like how do I make it in the industry? How do I get a foothold?
Yeah, yeah. I was actually going to ask, that was going to be a question I was going to ask. That one of the ones that I had prepared in my head was just, I noticed that you seem to do a lot of shorter form content. And I didn't know if that was intentional or if you, it sounds like you also aspire to do longer form things as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's almost like it was the you don't know what you don't know mentality and that sort of brashness of being a young artist and saying like, let's just do it. And then you make the thing and you go like, oh wow, this I see what I was aiming for. I think Ira Glass has this really good speech about like taste. Do you know this speech?
I don't, Rick, do you, are you
I'm
familiar?
familiar, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, where he's like, you have this taste and you have this like thing that you're aiming towards, but your skills and your whatever haven't sort of reached that level,
Mhm.
and so you feel really disappointed. And not that I'm disappointed in my first feature, but it's you can't show it. It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
an amateur feature, and so it was like I learned so much from that process that I was like, okay, now I know what I don't know, and I need to start like learning and piecing that together and operating at a much higher level. And so the rule I made for myself was no matter what I do independently, whether it be a music video or a commercial or whatever, short, I want to try to do something I've never done before, whether that be shoot something in long takes or shoot something with stop motion animation or shoot something that is with macro lenses. You know what I'm saying? So just
Yeah.
Hmm.
I'm doing something with each one so that by the time I feel that I'm ready to take on a much larger long form project, I have all of those tools refined.
Well-rounded.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Like just to kind of never stop learning. And to go back to something that you said, I mean, I think it's funny. I don't know that I've met a filmmaker or a writer or anybody that has, produced something or created something that has actually seemed like that they've been satisfied with it. And I almost feel like that the moment that they feel satisfied, like I think there's a problem. I think it's good, like I've kind of been the same way. Like I haven't done anything like that, but when I used to write things, like I used to, like I would just keep rewriting sentences over and over and over again. And like the more I would stare at it, I'm like, I just have to know when it's done and to walk away and know that I could just keep looking at this and keep tinkering and messing with it. So I think it's you say that like your amateur film is that, and like it's just funny. Like no artist to me, I feel like, is ever truly satisfied with their work. Maybe they're glad they got to a certain point, but I think that they always feel like they could do more or do better.
Absolutely. What do they say? Films are never done; they're released.
Hmm.
And yeah, and like I was at a point where I just wasn't really making anything, and I kind of kept getting gun shy because of exactly that. Right? You keep writing a script and rewriting it and tinkering, and is this the thing? Because you know how much work it's going to take, and you know how much money it's going to take, and how many favors you're going to have to pull, and on and on and on and on. Where
Right.
you're like, do I want to pull the trigger on this because I know the journey ahead of me, and you sort of get gun shy. And I went to a screening of it's a film called Upstream Color by Shane Carruth. Are you guys familiar with that?
I am
No.
not. Rick, are you?
No.
He's the guy who did Primer, which was like a
Oh,
little sci-fi, time travel movie.
That sounds
that
really
sounds
interesting.
familiar. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And Upstream Color is bonkers. Like it is just, like he made this sci-fi time travel movie that's really hard to kind of follow and piece together, but it all holds. Whereas Upstream Color is so sort of poetic and abstract, and there is a story in there, and it's cohesive in terms of its narrative and its themes, but it's like really, really, really kind of out there. And he was there for a Q&A, and I like the question I had is how did you know to start? When were you like, okay, I'm gonna spend the money and time and roll cameras on this? And he's like, I just picked a date. Like you can't know if it's going to be successful. You can't know if it's going to work out, but you just, at some point, you have to say, this is when we're going to start, and this is the thing I have in front of me, and so this is the thing I'm going to make. And that really changed everything for me, because I was like, okay, this might not be the perfect script, but I'm going to learn something while I make it.
Wow. Yeah, it's a good it's a good way to look at it for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, like, these things are hard, and when you're self-financing something, or you're asking other people to invest in you, it can be sort of like, oh gosh, is this is this worth doing? And if you see value in it as an artist, and you can say, yeah, it's worth it for me to attempt it, then I think that's enough sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. I think it's good just to start something and just to do it, because the more you just kind of procrastinate or just not pull the trigger, that's when you start overthinking things and, like you were saying, like self-doubting, and just you don't start anything, and like you said, for the most part, whether it ends up being what you ultimately want to do or not, hopefully you're going to get something out of it. You're going to learn something from it, and that'll be good for any future project.
Absolutely. Yeah, the last short film that I did with a guy named Jerry Spears, we co-directed it and co-wrote it. And it was like, again, is this the thing that we should be spending our time on? But, that got into these festivals and I met some amazing people because of it. And then Jerry became this collaborator and, on and on and on. So, yeah, I think you never know. You never know what's going to happen. And you just got to try and keep trying again and again. Yeah. Which can be hard because every turn at the plate, every bite at the apple, whatever metaphor you want to use, takes and I think you just get better as you get older, and I think that's what I've learned over the last, I don't know, decade or so of doing it. Like it hurts less every time because you're like, okay, I know these rhythms, I know what's going to happen, I know what this is going to take, and you just get, where to spend the time and money, and where to compromise and where not to, and things like that. That's more of the job than knowing how to use a camera.
Right. I mean, everything's experience. And so with everything, you're just earning more experience, and it becomes easier, and you're more prepared probably for everything that comes your way.
Absolutely. Yeah. For sure.
Rick, I'm going to pass it off to you. I feel like I'm hijacking this interview.
No worries. My next question, or one of the things I was going to ask you, was about the music video and how that came along to you, and the theme of it, and like how did that come about? Like, was it
the most recent one?
Yeah,
Sophie Strauss for Gone.
Yeah. So it's a really interesting story. So Sophie was the daughter of a mutual friend of somebody that I had worked with. I mean, I could walk the whole thing back, but this might be interesting because part of being in the industry and just showing up, even if you're doing jobs you don't necessarily want to be doing, it can lead to something else. So I was working at Dreamworks, and I met a filmmaker and production designer who hired me on some commercial work. And I met the head of this company that had a friend, and Sophie is his daughter. So like, that's sort of the connection, this crazy kind of, yeah. I remember I did a short and I ended up winning this festival, this competition. And I came in to Dreamworks, and they were like, hey, so what did you do over the weekend? And I was like, I won a film festival. And they were like, you make films? And I was like, okay, that hurts. The fact that like people don't see me as a filmmaker, because at the time I was like a production supervisor. And they were like, well, let's string it up, let's put it in, let's watch it. So we ended up going into one of the review rooms, and everybody kind of packed in there, and we watched it. And it was from that this guy approached me and was like, hey, you're out there doing stuff, and I liked it. And, I have this opportunity to shoot some commercials, and I'd love to bring you onto that. So that's how that happened. Just crazy kismet. Huh. So I met Sophie, and she came out with a record, and I loved it. And, I like doing music videos, and I was like, I would love to do a music video for you. And she was like, yeah, great. Like, let's do it. And it never happened for this record. And then her second record came along, and she was like, okay, yeah, let's make one happen. So we did this one called Dogfight, which I don't know if you guys saw, but it's like her. Did you guys see that one?
No, I've only seen Gone.
She was like submerged in milk, and there's like all of these limbs like kind of going over her and stuff, and that got some success in the film festival circuit, and people seemed to respond to it. And Billboard actually put it out and did an article about it, which was really super cool that we got that kind of exposure. And so when she started working on new tracks, she just kind of emailed me out of the blue and was like, okay, this is the next video I want to do. Here's the song. What do you got? And so yeah, and it's a really cool thing because it's, it's the first time, I don't know if it's the very first time, but she started writing from a place of like, she just got married, and the guy who plays the tattoo artist is her real life husband.
Okay.
And, she started having, these very positive kind of feelings. And it was, I think a lot of artists, I don't know if this is true for everybody, but kind of shy away from like indulging in like the happy, positive, I'm in love kind of vibe. But she kind of went down that road and wrote this love song about him. And she was like, we got to do a video where he's in it. And it kind of had this 80s, kind of production to it, and very nostalgic kind of John Hughesy kind of vibe to it. And so together we kind of built this little story out and ended up shooting it over like 3 days in 5 different cities, and had a pretty low budget, but we were able to like I think, expand the world of it a little bit. And then sort of towards the end of shooting it, I was like, this this has to come out on VHS. Like this is one of those 80s vibey movies that it's just gonna, almost look like VHS, because it's got that. I don't know if you've ever seen the film Amblin by Spielberg, his like early short films.
No, I haven't.
I've seen that. You haven't?
No.
Okay. I feel like that's something we both should have seen, but we have not.
Yeah.
It's like one of his very early films, and it's just about like it's called Amblin because it's like two people, a girl and a guy, and he's got a guitar, and they're ambling through California. And this kind of has that same vibe, right, where they jump in a car and they're just kind of going through the desert and end up at a motel and at a bar and do karaoke and that sort of thing. And I remember seeing a VHS copy of Amblin. That's how I first saw it, and like that texture and that vibe and that like warbliness of it. So we went down this road. She was like, "Yeah, let's do a VHS release." And so I went down the road of releasing it on VHS, and it turns out that the process of that was maybe 5 times more effort than making the video.
Oh wow, I can imagine.
Yeah, I mean, we did a poster design that's done in that Drew Struzan style, he did like the original Star Wars posters and Back to the Future. So we got this artist named Sam Gilby, who was in the UK, and the pandemic had just started, so we're editing it remotely, and we're getting art done across the world. And we're getting this, once the poster was done, which was the whole thing, then we had to design the case, the case for the tape. And then order the tapes and order the cases and start assembling them and putting the labels on as all these tiny little pieces, and then actually getting the file onto the tape was a journey in and of itself, where you have to go to a DVD, and then from a DVD player into the aux cables into a VCR, which started falling apart halfway through the dubbing process. But ultimately we did it. We have 10 copies. There will never be any more.
I'm done with that. 10's enough.
Yeah, it's just amazing going backwards. Like, you really had to like kind of step it back, going from digital to DVD to VHS. Yeah.
Well, I think you really nailed the aesthetic in the video. It definitely had that like almost instantly you just see and feel that 80s vibe, especially like I think the title of the song pops on in the beginning and in the pink lettering. So yeah, you did a really good job with that. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that was like, I'm remembering like it's like late 80s, early 90s, like Full House or those sitcoms or, any of those movies. It's always like this big, beautiful house and somebody's upset because things aren't going their way and they run away, so we kind of yeah.
Quick follow-up really quick. This is about Steven Spielberg. You were talking about the Amblin thing. Is that what named, like, is that what brought on the name Amblin Entertainment? Did that come first, this short or film that you watched?
Yeah, the short was kind of what got him his career. I don't know the exact story, but it was almost like, he got this handful of money from Sid Sheinberg or somebody, and they were like, "Yeah, we'd love to work with you and hire you, but you gotta make something professional looking, because he had all these little shorts that he had done. He even had a feature, I think, called Firelight or something like that was shot on 8mm. And so he went off and shot this movie, and they were like, "Yeah, okay, yeah, you can tell a story. Awesome."
That's awesome.
And, Amblin Entertainment is named for that short.
Yeah. I kind of, when you were saying that, I'm like, I learned something today.
Today I learned. Yeah.
Yeah, today I learned.
Yeah, watching the video, like, I really liked the video a lot. I thought, like, visually, like, you pretty much nailed it as far as 80s goes. And I definitely see that influence of like John Hughes movies and just visually like an Amblin film, style.
Yeah. I really, thank you. I really wanted to kind of capture that sort of like free spirit of almost like those like early 90s independent films where, they're very loose kind of, but then they're also kind of coming out of the tradition of big budget studio films of the 80s. So we do a lot of handheld, but we also have a lot of locked off shots that kind of feel, I watched, the Pat Benatar video for Love is a Battlefield and Dirty Dancing. And, there's even that little moment where they do the dance outside the car. That's a little bit Breakfast Club. Yeah, exactly.
So the video was just released, right? Fairly recently?
Just came out. Yeah.
Okay, cool. While we were talking, because I got curious, I actually pulled up the video for Dogfight, and I'm just watching it on mute. And yeah, it's a very cool video too, man. Like, it seems like you brought up like just kind of like you have many hats. It seems like in the filmmaking world, and I feel like so far from the stuff that I've seen, I'm able to notice that in your work, because this video is completely different from Gone. So
yeah. I mean, that's something that go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, I'm sure it's very helpful for you to be well-rounded like that.
Yeah, in some ways, it's a massive detriment, because everybody wants you to be in a box, and they're like, "Oh, are you the ethereal milk guy, or are you the guy who shoots stuff in black and white, or are you the, I've done, some food commercials, and they're like, "Oh, are you a tabletop food guy?" Or, I'm in the middle of doing an animated film right now in 2D. I'm working with an animator in Israel, and it's like, okay, so are you an animated guy? And it gets really tough to hire me, people, because if they're going to hire an animation person, they're going to hire somebody who just does that over and over and over and over again.
Of course.
But even though that's been sort of a difficult hurdle in my career, it keeps me engaged. I'm following what I'm interested in. I don't need like at the end of the day, I have to be making work that I'm engaged with and interested in. And, I think it was Fincher who said, I never want to be the victim of anybody else's ignorance. Mm-hmm. And what he meant by that is like, he knew every job on set. And, I've been a PA, and I've been a coordinator, and I've edited things, and I've produced things, and I've DP'd certain things not very well. But, I know every job, and I know my own limitations, and I know people who can do it better. But at the end of the day, I never want to be the victim of my own ignorance, let alone somebody else's, so.
Right. And you probably don't want to be put in a box either. You probably like the fact that, like you said, maybe it's a detriment to an extent, but I mean, for you, especially like even just for your own inspiration and creativity, it probably is nice that you have all these different avenues that you can go down to if called upon.
Absolutely. And it's led to some really cool, relationships going back to that, being able to say like, yes, I will edit your film. I don't need to be the director. I don't need to be the writer. I'll just sit here and try to tell your story the best way possible. Or, I'm just going to do photography for this campaign, and just focus on what's inside that one image and that one frame. And those things, allow me to do more jobs and do different types of jobs. I recently shot a commercial for a subscription box company that is for equestrians. They do like saddle oil and, helmet spray and compression socks for horses. And
I think I saw that video.
Yeah, but I'm not surprised something like that exists. Like, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. And they were like, well, this is the whole budget. And I was like, well, for that, I would have to shoot it and edit it and direct it. And, like, I can't hire a crew. And they were like, well, can you? And I was like, well, yeah, I guess I could. And I did. And it turned out great. So, in that way it helps. But other times, yeah, definitely. I've been told time and time again by really, really smart, people who have been in the industry a very long time, like, pick a box, get in there and stay in there so that you can get hired as that person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you started out at Dreamworks. How was it working at Dreamworks?
Do you want like the politically correct answer? Do you want the real answer?
The real answer, or whatever you're most.
However you feel.
Yeah.
It was a really, really, really challenging time. Personally, professionally. I mean, Dreamworks has some absolutely incredible facilities. I was actually starting in their television department, which was just being built at the time. So like literally ground floor, it felt like we were at a startup inside of a huge company, because we were literally building the pipeline and getting new assets and kind of figuring out how this thing was going to work. And so we were sort of in a bank building in the middle of Sherman Oaks, where the rest of the, team was over at the campus. And, periodically we go over there and we get to play the ping pong tables and the foosball tables and get the free lunch and walk around the koi pond and all of that stuff. So like those facilities were amazing. And, working on something that has such name brand recognition. I worked on How to Train Your Dragon, the TV show. And it's the sort of thing where you tell your aunts or your uncles or your grandparents what you do, and they go, oh, okay, I know what that is. I can put my head around that. Right. So having that sort of recognition was really great, but it was a very grueling, we were working with overseas studios. We had studios in New Zealand and China, in Bangalore, and we they would start their day as our day ended, and our day would end as their day started. And so it was a 24/7 process. I would wake up and have, dozens and dozens of emails. I'd have shots coming in that I'd have to kind of parse through and organize and get to the right departments. And, we would be at, having our meetings at very, very, early in the morning and very, very late at night. And so it was just exhausting. And I got so burnt out working there. And then on top of that, at the time and in that department, it was very political. So there were a lot of people jockeying for these new positions, people who came from Dreamworks proper, people who were new to the television department. And so you have this very difficult job with a lot of expectation and a lot of shots. And we were doing something that had never been done on television before to that degree. And then adding the political layer to it just made it very, very, very difficult at times. So, and it really crystallized, what I wanted to be doing. It's like, yes, I've got the name recognition, I've got the paycheck, I'm working at a studio that is world known, on properties that everybody can relate to. The quality of the work is good. Our show won an Annie Award, all of that stuff. But I was not happy. It was miserable. And so when that show ended, I said, I'm going to step away. And that's when I went into advertising and getting into live action and sort of rebuilding a career after animation.
Okay. Probably a good place for you to get started, though. Maybe it was a frustrating time, but I mean, I'm sure you obviously learned a lot and walked away from it, with having more knowledge for your next step.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, I don't regret any steps in my career, and I made some incredible friends and connections at Dreamworks. Again, having that name brand recognition helps, getting the next job, and I learned so much about not only the CG pipeline, but also about distribution and about how, animation works. And again, it was starting last year. I kind of was like, I do love animation, not necessarily CG, but 2D animation is part of something that's always been, in my, imagination. I always wanted to attempt it. And so I wrote a script, and again, I'm in production on this 2D animated short, which I'm really excited about. So I came all the way after leaving Dreamworks being like, I don't want anything to do with animation. I came all the way back around going, well, I can do it on my terms. So let's do it.
Yeah. You've probably been away from it long enough to where you're ready to dip a toe back into that world.
Exactly. And even in the interim, I did some stop motion work and I did, things like that. So I love animation. I really do. And some of my favorite films are animated. And have you guys seen any of the stuff that's been coming out recently, like I Lost My Body or Undone or any of those things?
I feel terrible. So far, everything you've mentioned, I'm not familiar with, and I feel terrible, but I don't, Rick, what about you?
No, I haven't seen those. But as far as animation, the latest shorts I've seen were just the Oscar shorts.
Oh, yeah. The beautiful. I mean, that Hair Love.
Yeah, Hair Love was amazing.
Stunning. There was that sort of experimental-ish stop motion one, that kind of like live action with the bird. Do you remember that one? And there was the whale one that was all done with oil painting, and
that one blew my mind. That was crazy.
Yeah, so it was watching animated shorts and connecting to these things, and you're just like, I mean, the film that I wrote takes place over eons and eons and goes to all these different planets. And I was like, well, you can't shoot this, but you can draw it. So that's why we decided to go with animation.
Yeah. Most of the every time the animated shorts for the Oscars come around, one of the local theaters, usually by where I work, usually plays them. So I usually tend to go out and try to catch them anytime or when the season comes around for it.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think that seeing them back to back is so cool. Just all the different. Again, it's sitting down, it's giving full attention
to it. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and that it's a totally different way of experiencing. I remember seeing Fantasia as a kid, and that to me was just a bunch of short animated films, kind of smashed together. Mm-hmm. And that has always stuck in my head. It's always been a huge, touchstone for me as a filmmaker.
Yeah, I think to go back to this, because you brought up again, it's cool to see them all back to back, and they have your full attention. With this pandemic that's going on and stuff, and we can't go to movie theaters, and some films have been released, for viewing at home way sooner than they would have normally. In some cases they were just straight released in that way. And I think that's really cool. Like, I mean, I think that's fun for us, for the audience, for the entertainment value of it. But I will say, there is something about going to a movie theater in that, obviously you don't want to read, but it does force you to put your phone down and to pay attention to what's happening. I am as guilty of anyone as I'm watching something at home of just still constantly looking at my phone and like, okay, I'm done. I'm going to set it down now. And then something else pops in my head and I look at my phone. So, I mean, I think, man, that's one thing, like, that would be missed about the theater experience is that it really does force you to pay attention.
Yeah, and it's also that shared experience. There are movies I saw alone, and then I see them in the theater, and people are laughing. Like I remember seeing Lawrence of Arabia on like DVD or whatever, and then the Egyptian did a 35 millimeter print that they put up or whatever it was, and people are laughing and gasping, and I'm experiencing the film in a completely different way. Something I didn't see that was funny, clearly was a joke and things like that, and. Mm-hmm. I was one of the first people to get Movie Pass until it died. And then I have the AMC, whatever, Stubs. A-list,
A-list. And VIP.
Yeah, horribly named program. But it's great because it frees me up to go to the theater and have that experience. And it's just, I was reading an interview with Sean Baker, the guy who did Tangerine and the Florida Project. And he was saying, like, even when he's in production on a movie, he'll still go to the movie theater. Mm-hmm. Like that's how important it is to his, experience. And I get that, being in that space and focusing on that thing with a bunch of strangers is incredible.
It is a totally different experience. So like there's a vibe to it. It creates an atmosphere. I mean, like a lot of times, like I'm somebody that could watch like the funniest movie, that's currently out. And if I'm watching it by myself, I'm the type of person that like, I might think it's funny, but I might not outwardly laugh. But when you are in the theater with a bunch of people and you hear them laughing, it's contagious. Or if you're watching something that is suspenseful or scary or whatever, knowing that you're in this packed theater and like you could hear a pin drop because everybody is so, focused on what's happening on the screen, it adds to the experience. So like, yeah, like as fun as it's been to be able to catch a lot of these things a lot sooner at home than normal, I think there will be something that will always be lost to the theater experience.
Absolutely. It's like listening to, your favorite record as you drive down the road, which is a great, experience in and of itself. Mm-hmm. But going to a concert is a totally different thing,
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, like, that's why when I hear, like, they're talking about AMC going bankrupt or something like that, I'm hoping it's not going to happen. I don't think it will happen. But, like, the theater is just, as we're all movie lovers, like, it's just something you can't replace,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could see us going down a road. Sorry. I could see us going down a road where maybe going to a theater ends up being kind of like, maybe that's not the way to see movies anymore. Maybe it's like a special thing for people. Like, I mean, maybe that's still years down the road, but I mean, I think they'll always exist, but with how much we've just went digital and with now this happening, unfortunately, I could see it becoming more of a niche thing where it's like, oh yeah, we're going to go to the movie theater, back what we used to do, rather than watch it at home.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, look at where Alamo Drafthouse is already going. It's like, you're going to spend $60 because you're going to get the ticket and the food and the beer and whatever and sit down and it's going to be this whole big thing. But almost the way that, Broadway is now, it's this very special thing that not everybody gets to go to all the time.
Yeah.
Hopefully it doesn't go there too soon or it doesn't become too inaccessible. I'd love to see a revival of almost like, kind of what the New Beverly is doing. You know, even if it's not a formal theater, spaces that can be converted into group viewing places. And those are great.
Yeah, there is something about seeing something in a group. So, yeah, I think even if we go down this path where it becomes less and less, in a theater, I still think that will exist in some form as like a special sort of thing. So I guess that'll be nice, that it'll probably always be there, but maybe a little bit sad and unfortunate that like going to the movies isn't such a common thing anymore. But I still think we're pretty far away from that. I hope
so too. Yeah.
I saw True Romance for the first time at the New Beverly, and that experience was amazing.
It's such, I mean, it's one of those things where you wouldn't think, when somebody comes to LA for a visit, that you'd be like, oh, this is something you should do, but it's such a great experience with the old trailers and,
Yeah.
everything that they do to make that experience. It's just, you're transported back into a different era of cinema.
Yeah, and kind of different, but you mentioned Alamo Drafthouse. I really love, like, not the one opened up in downtown LA. That was my first time I've ever been to one, was when it opened here. And I really enjoy how all the pre-movie stuff that's on the screen is like usually tailored to what you're about to see. It really adds to the experience, like I just think it's really cool. Like, I've cracked up at some of the things that they're showing before. Like, I think before I saw it Chapter 2, or I think that's what I saw. Yeah, and other things. Like, I think it adds to the experience that they make it special. They give you more of a reason to go to the theater other than just to see it with people, because they tailor it to what you're watching. I think that's neat.
Yeah. I mean, the way that theaters used to operate is you would buy, and this is way, way long ago, is you would buy a ticket, and that ticket gave you access to the theater all day. There weren't showing slots. They would just string up the reels, and in between the reels, there would be news and there'd be cartoons, and then they would play the movie again. And if you wanted to, you could just sit there all day. And I hope we see a little bit of a return to that style, because there are so many amazing short films that aren't being seen, and so many amazing whatever, that you could curate this experience that goes along with each of the features.
Yeah, I think it's really cool when they have that little extra component. Like, I don't know, Rick, I know you've been a couple times, but it's just every time I've been to the Alamo so far, and the New Beverly too, like it's a different experience based off what you're watching.
Yeah, the Alamo is definitely unique like that too. Like, Alamo and New Beverly have like their own thing going on in a way, because like, yeah, at the New Beverly, like, you'll get old trailers from the year that movie came out, or just old trailers in general. And the way New Beverly does it is like how they cater the trailers or the pre-show to what you're about to see. So like, I'm assuming when you saw it, they were probably showing a lot of clown themed pre-show stuff. So
yeah, Rick is not very fond of clowns, so that was definitely not something he was going to go to with me. But yeah, they definitely had a lot of cool stuff like that, and it was fun. I think the theater experience will always have something to offer in some shape or form.
yeah, and I would wish that more theaters would show like short films and short animated films as well too, because I'm always excited to see those when Oscar time comes around. So when the theater I go to, it's in Orange County. Like, every Wednesday they usually play older movies, and I think the last one they had was Breakfast at Tiffany's, if I remember correctly. But just like all these old, they play Lawrence of Arabia as well too. So like, it's cool for me. Like, I like going to that theater because like, on Wednesdays, because of that, because of like all these old movies that I can see with the group, rather than just popping it on at home.
Yeah, it's a completely different experience, and yeah, it's, again, I think people will get, hopefully, if there is a threat to the theaters, that innovation and other ways of doing programming will be invented to lure people back.
Yeah, I think that'll help keep it alive. So Gregory, how long have you been in LA now? I'm assuming for quite a while.
Yeah, we moved here in 2008. So
okay, yeah, you've been for a bit.
Yeah.
How do you? Because you said you were from Pittsburgh, is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So how? I know Ryan tried living out here for about a year, and like, I think he loved and hated it. So I mean, what was your transition to basically moving coast like for you? I mean, do you like it out here, or do you like it here more just for obviously it's a good place for you to be for your job?
Yeah.
How do you feel about LA?
That's a really good question. I mean, I feel like LA is a city that really makes you work for its affection. Like, those first few years were really tough. It's all the things that people say. It's very spread out. Where in New York, that city presents itself to you, or Philly or something, where you can walk down the street and there's a district that is, full of shops, or a district that's full of theaters, or a district that's whatever. Whereas in LA, you might have like a fantastic, restaurant that's in the back of a laundromat in the strip mall in Encino. So you just have to find it, and you have to, or somebody has to tell you about it, or you have to do a lot of research on the internet and realize, okay, well, if I want to make it through traffic in order to get there, So yeah, those first few years were really difficult and isolating. And even though I had some friends from college, none of us knew what we were doing or how to get around. And but I think what's so cool about LA and what makes it such an amazing city is it's almost like a Las Vegas buffet that has every single thing on the buffet that you could possibly want.
Yeah.
And if you know what part of the buffet to go to, you can make the perfect meal.
That's a good analogy. I like that.
And so once you know where all the pieces are, it's like my favorite bookstore is in Los Feliz, so I'm going to go there, and then my coffee shop is in Burbank, and then my favorite theater is on Melrose, and whatever. You kind of can piece together this perfect experience, and it has everything, any type of food or any type of entertainment, and like we're just talking about, you can see Lawrence of Arabia, or you can see the programming of short films, or somebody doing a legal version of Hamilton, in the back of a, thrift store. So it's great.
Yeah.
It's got everything.
It might take you 2.5 hours to get to each location, but it's all there for you.
Exactly. Yeah. So you really got to pick and choose all that stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do love it. Absolutely. But I also find that one of the best things you can do, especially as somebody who's in the industry, is to get out, to go. And that's what the film festivals have provided. But, go to Portland, go somewhere, drive somewhere where you can just get out of the soup a little bit and get some perspective and meet some people who aren't, asking, what do you do as your first question? And have I seen anything you've done? And those sort of questions where you always feel like it's transactional and you're trying to prove your worth to somebody.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
What about you? Do you guys enjoy Los Angeles?
Well, so I grew up in Southern California, and I've lived in San Diego, I've lived in Orange County, I've lived in LA. I'm not really the biggest fan of LA, and I think I'm just I'm a little burnt out on California in general, at least Southern California, but probably California in general. But I think that's just because, people that aren't from here, they talk about the weather and the weather and blah, blah, blah. And then for me, having lived here my whole life, I'm like, yeah, I'd like to experience some seasons, I guess this 70 plus degrees is nice. But I mean, when I've experienced this every day, pretty much of my life, it gets a little boring and tedious. And so it's funny when I get into conversations with people that are from places that are a little bit colder and colder climates, and they talk about snowstorms and all this. I'm like, man, that sounds awesome. It's like, well, you wouldn't like that if you were in it. And I'm just like, well, talk to me, 10 years after you've been in California, and you might feel like that the constant heat and sun is a little mundane after a while. So it's just it's the same thing.
I agree. I love it. I think recently it was raining a lot here, and it feels like time is passing and something is happening. When seasons go past, you're like, oh, I can demarcate, my life in a way and break it down into these manageable chunks. Whereas in LA, I've been here for a while, but it doesn't feel that long because it all feels, there's a homogeny to it and a sameness.
Yeah. It's just, and it's bad. I'm so over the sunny weather that I know just now it just started getting hot the past few days, but I'm already over. I'm just already over it. Summer to me has no meaning ever since I've been done with school. So I'm just like, can we just, I'm all about, I'd rather have the colder weather, the clouds, the rain. I'm just immune to it. So I think for me, it's just, I'm just kind of getting California. I'm ready to see something else. But yeah, LA, I mean, I'm in LA now. That's where I live. It's not my favorite place, but I mean, I definitely agree. There's tons of stuff to do here and in Southern California in general.
Yeah, absolutely. My wife went to school in San Diego. And so I was, commuting down there periodically to see her, and just, that's beautiful. We have family in San Francisco, going up there, and yeah, again, just getting out of the soup and just seeing other things. And, it also makes you appreciate things about Los Angeles, when you go back to Pittsburgh and there's 3 theaters and they are only showing the, modern films, you're like, oh man, where's the weird concert that's happening? Where's the, pop-up food truck that, it just, LA just always, there's always something, which is.
Yeah, that's very true. It's very true.
Yeah.
San Diego's great. That's where I went to school too. And I love, that's probably my favorite city in Southern California. I just like, maybe it's just because for me, like that was like a city and a county that I discovered on my own, like where that's where I went off to school and I learned that city on my own. So I really have a soft spot for San Diego.
It's almost like you have a sense of ownership when that happens. Like I feel that way about Philly, like, oh, I discovered it, in this strange.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, San Diego's, we got married in Balboa Park.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, we love it down there. And it's almost like, why is nobody talking about this? And I feel like San Diego's like, shh.
Yeah, no, it's totally like that. It's totally like, yeah, my girlfriend and I were just talking about Balboa Park last night, and like they have that restaurant there called the Prado, and that restaurant is amazing. And just like there's so much food in San Diego. The Mexican food people don't seem to understand. It's like the Mexican food in San Diego versus LA, or even Orange County and San Diego. It's completely different. Like when I was living in Orange County, I could get into San Diego, like, like Carlsbad, Oceanside area, probably like if there's no traffic in 45 minutes to an hour. And people don't believe me when I say the Mexican food is completely different. Like it's not the same thing. And so, yeah, it's very interesting.
I mean, and then you look at, just the beer culture that's down there. I think there's more breweries in San Diego than any other city in the U.S. I could be wrong about that.
No, you're correct on that.
And just what comes along with the beer is not just breweries, but these, these gastro pubs and these, Modern Times is doing amazing things with coffee and, yeah, and it's right on the ocean, and it's absolutely. There's. Have you been to I think it's the Jonas Salk Institute?
No.
It's like near La Jolla. It's this beautiful kind of piece of modernist architecture. You should definitely Google it and look at it. But then right next door to it, like literally, is a parasailing academy.
Oh, wow.
And so you can just like, what is this? Like, where are we? Like on the left of us, there's like seals, and then there's this piece of architecture, and the sun is setting over these cliffs, and people are parasailing, and you're like, why is nobody talking about this place?
Yeah, it's so true, man. I think San Diego is definitely a hidden gem for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I even, have you ever seen Anchorman?
Of course.
I always think of, he's like, he loves the city so much. And then when we finally went there, I was like, I get it.
Yeah, no.
I understand Ron Burgundy.
Yeah, dude, exactly. Right. Like I was proud to be a San Diegan when that movie came out.
Yeah.
Yeah. The email that you sent, you mentioned that we can go into music a little bit right now. You mentioned that you'd watch Rick and Mike talk about Green Day in that video.
Yeah, that's right. So
I'm not in that video because for some reason, it drives me crazy and it stresses me out to make lists of top 5, top whatever. It stresses me out. And so I'm just like, you know what, that's your guys' thing. Like they like doing that. So like I participate with certain ones, like we usually do on this show, like, our favorite movies or video games of the year. And that's a little bit more palatable, I guess, for me, because it's like, all right, it's what I've played, it's what I've experienced in a given year. But when you start getting into things like, what are your favorite bands of all time? And I'm just like, I don't want to pick. Like, it stresses me out. So, plus they're the bigger Green Day fans than I am, but that's why I wasn't on that. But if you guys want to talk about that a little bit, and the album and Green Day, or even your musical taste, I mean, like I said, the show's called Some Shit We Like, so we just kind of talk about whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk. I mean, Green Day is one of those bands that I grew up with. Like I remember when Dookie came out and what that was, and I mean, they've always had pop leanings, and I think my sister belonged to one of those like early Columbia CD record clubs, and
oh my god,
you remember those?
Yeah.
And she got Nimrod and was like, here, you can have this one. And I was like, this is great. Nimrod was so good. And then I was in college when American Idiot came out, and that was like this new stage for the band. And so, yeah, they've always been kind of poppy and had these big ambitions, but the new record it sounds like a different band.
Right.
They did a record underneath the moniker, like the Foxtrot.
Yeah.
What was that band?
I think it was like Foxtrot Hot Tub or something. Yeah.
And I was like, do that, like put a different band name on it, use that name again, whatever you want to do, because it's so far away, and it also highlights just what production can do to the sound of a band.
Yeah. It just
produced in a completely different way, and I'm like, did you team up with Portugal the Man? What happened here? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, some of those like secret side bands that he does, like either with like Pinhead Gunpowder or the one was before the Foxtrot. The Network was the other one. I don't know if you've heard that album from.
I haven't. No.
Yeah, the Network. That one I think came out in 04, I want to say. No, it was after. It was definitely after. No, because 04 was American Idiot, I believe. But it was definitely after American Idiot, where him and I think he got together with Devo as well too to make this album.
Oh, that's cool.
So like it has like this really retro. You'd definitely like it because it has that like retro Devo 80s type of sound to it. And,
yeah. Well, it's strange with them because you can't accuse them of selling out. They're already massively successful. They've had their music in commercials.
Right.
Like there's not they have a Broadway show, right, based on one of their records. It's
exactly.
So what was this? What was the point of it? Every time I hear it, I hear the voiceover for a commercial like 0.9 APR on all selected Chevy Toyota. Like whatever. Like you just hear the voiceover. It just feels like a record that was built for commercial appeal, literally for commercials. And I don't blame them. They're still trying stuff at their age, and they don't need to. They could just play the hits, but they put out that what is it, Uno, Dos, Tres?
Yeah.
Which was, whether you like it or hate it, it's like just this immediate chunk of, gigantic chunk of music that they could have, pared it down and refined it and put out a proper record, but they were like, let's just do it, which I respect that.
Yeah, that was, we talked about that, like how that album, like I listened to it once, but it just didn't click with me. And, I appreciate what they did. I mean, it's great that they got to do, like I said, what they wanted, but those albums just never clicked.
Yeah, like you don't repeat listen to them. They just
exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, this new album, like, yeah, at first I was just like I said, like I wasn't a fan, and then like it just started growing on me, which was kind of funny to think about.
Well, it's not a bad record. I mean, he can still write the hooks. He's got great melodies. Like,
yeah.
I would love to go to a spin class where they just play that record. It's got really peppy beats, and it just feels like such a departure for that band that it's a confusing move, but by no means is it bad. Like if that was a band's first record, everybody would be like, oh, these guys are great. Have you heard of,
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Have you guys heard any new records that have come out recently while you've been in quarantine that you've kind of done a deep dive on or have become your new soundtrack?
I can't say that I have. Like I feel like I'm sort of in a musical funk in that, there hasn't really been anything new that I've come across that has, excited me. So I end up turning to things that I've liked in the past. So I guess the most recent thing that I have is, I don't know if you're familiar with the band Him.
Yes, I do know of Him.
Okay.
That's an acronym, right?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I think it's just Him. I know some people thought, or they say it stood for His Infernal Majesty, but I think for the most part, they're just Him. I might have my history messed up on that. If Mike was here, he'd be able to help me out with that. But yeah, they're not a band anymore. But the lead singer just recently released, maybe about a month ago, 3 just out of nowhere, just 3 tracks that sound very much like Him. In this case, literally Him, because it's just Him, but the lead singer. So that kind of has me excited and wanting for more. And I don't know if that's how this is supposed to be released initially, or if it had to do with this whole pandemic. But it's been cool to get some new music that sounds very much like the band that I used to and still love. And I'm hoping for more. So that's very cool. If you haven't seen that, I think it's being stylized as like VV, or just look. Villa Vallo is the name of the lead singer, and there's 3 tracks, and they're really good.
I'll definitely check that out. I feel like when the world is kind of crazy, it's always good to go for what I call like sonic comfort food, which are just like those bands where you're like, I just love it. They scratch the itch. I feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love doing those deep dives. Recently, Fiona Apple came out with a new record.
Oh wow.
Highly recommend it. It's I think it's a masterpiece, but she's somebody I've listened to since, the 90s or whatever, when she started coming out with her music.
Right.
And, it's cool to see her evolve. And then a band called Bright Eyes just, I think, released their first few tracks. The same thing that you just mentioned. They dropped 2 tracks out of nowhere. For I think the first stuff in 10 years, a decade. Yeah.
Damn.
And it sounds very much like that band that I listened to, in college, and it just kind of hit that little nostalgia, button, and I was like, this is great.
Yeah, that's the best when music definitely does that for you. It takes you to different places in your life.
Yeah, I don't know if you do this, but certain days I'll wake up and I'm like, oh, it feels like this type of music today, and then you go find that music and put it on. Like,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Or like I have certain songs or music that I like only want to listen to like at night or something. It's like, no, this isn't a daytime song. This is a nighttime song.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a whole playlist for nighttime songs. So
yeah,
if there's something I like to do is make lists of songs.
San Diego too, Rick.
Yeah, I drive to San Diego songs.
Specific drives.
Yeah, this track comes up just as you're passing the power plant. And,
exactly.
Absolutely.
There's those demarcations along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, God, I'm completely forgetting the name of that movie, Elizabethtown, where at the end she has like that whole binder full of like everything. I don't know if you watched Elizabethtown.
No, I've never seen it.
It's Cameron Crowe. She has like this like whole thing mapped out for him for his trip back home, and it's like that's kind of like how I am when I'm going to go on a road trip to San Diego. I made that playlist, or I'm going to go to San Francisco. I'll make a playlist for that. Like everything just kind of like mapped out,
Yeah, and then those playlists become indelible parts of the memory. Like going when you travel. Like I got the Beatles One. That record of like. I listened to that when I was in London, and like that record feels like London to me. Like that is just indelible. But yeah, did you guys see Boyhood? Have you ever seen that film Boyhood?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
The part where he talks about making the Gray album or something, the Black album, like it's basically like all the post Beatles tracks that sound like I'm like, I want that. Like that sounds so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny like how that happens. Like sometimes I associate things with music so much that I almost refuse to listen to it. Like you just brought up like, oh, this reminds me of London and this reminds me of this place. I'm like, I'm like, well, I don't want to listen to this right now because it's going to make me think of that place and I'm not there right now. And like, it's going to make me a little bit depressed maybe because I'm going to wish that I was there. And in some cases, maybe it's different and it makes me feel good and puts me in that place. But like, sometimes there's things that I just won't even touch until I'm in that area again, which is funny. I'm weird like that though.
No, you're saying makes perfect sense. I have a friend who has to like, he basically calls it like reprogramming, where he's like, I want a new association with this record, so I'm just going to start listening to it when I'm doing this instead of that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for sure.
Yeah. But I also think like it's almost like this it's like an emotional respect where you're like, you have this museum of emotions and you're like, I don't want to go into that wing today, but when I do, it's all there and it's ready for me and it's preserved. And I think that's like a beautiful thing where you're allowing yourself, by not exposing that music to other parts of your life, you're containing this, like you're preserving this part that you can access later.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, when the last Get Up Kids album came out, like it was out for a while and I wasn't like, I go back and forth between LA and Orange County, but I lived in Orange County for pretty much most of my 20s. So when that album came out, it's like, I'm not going to listen to this until I have to work in Orange County. I have to listen to it over there. I'm going to drive either home or going into that city. Like, I just associate that band with when I lived there. So I put that on hold until like I was in that area. But that's pretty much how I feel with music too, just certain areas and certain memories. Like I know people talk about smell being that trigger for memory, but I know for myself, it's always been music, which seems to be that way for you too.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's just that idea of like, you connect so emotionally to it, but then as somebody who's, visually taking in everything, it kind of convalesces into this, complete experience instead of it just being about like my wife loves music and she's a dancer, but she does not have that same experience, right? Like she just looks at it as like music, it's entertainment. Whereas I feel like what we're talking about here is just this like complete emotional, connection to everything that's happening while we listen to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So Gregory, what during like this pandemic, obviously, I'm assuming has slowed you down a little bit, but I'm also wondering if it's also giving you some free time to work on some things that maybe you otherwise haven't been able to.
Yeah, absolutely. It's strange. I say I've been like training for this because I was working at a company called Full Screen, doing a lot of
Oh, full
advertising.
screen.
Yeah, do you know of them?
I applied there.
Oh, I'll put in a good word for you.
That was a while back. I didn't get it.
Gregory denied your application, Rick. Sorry.
That's all right.
But during that time, it was complete work from home. So the way that the company was structured is my department was remote first, meaning like we'd come in for meetings and stuff, but I ended up building an office space in my home. And that, I got into the ritual of, waking up, getting my coffee going, sitting down in the office and starting to work. And so I've been doing a lot of stuff outside, the house and doing photo shoots and being on set and things like that. And since I can't do that, I've kind of fallen back into the ritual of getting up and going into the office and doing work. And I've been able to I have this whiteboard of all the projects I want to do. And like there's check marks next to 2 of them out of 10. And now I'm like just checking them off. So I wrote a pitch for a television show. I wrote 3 or 4 new scripts. I was able to move forward on this animated short film that I'm doing. I was able to do those, VHS tapes that took forever. So yeah, just really, really using this time to kind of fill the hopper up with everything I want to do as soon as we're allowed to go out and execute.
Yeah, I think that's definitely been a nice thing, a nice, I guess, side effect of this whole pandemic for sure, is to be able to put your focus in on things you've been meaning to work on, or maybe things that you never thought to work on, or yeah, start up a new interest of some sort. So definitely has its pluses and minuses.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea of boredom is so underrated. The idea that you can sit there and I'm just like, I finished all my work, and then I'm like, man, I did want to learn how to play that thing on piano. I don't really play piano very well, but I'm like, there's enough YouTube tutorials and stuff that I'm learning, the chord structure for this thing and playing piano, or I'm doodling, or I'm just, I think boredom is such an important part of the creative process, part of even, what was it? Somebody said that like somebody came up with the theory of, did you read this? That like it was some professor, they were put on leave and they came up with like the theory of, oh gosh, what was it? Anyways, the point I'm trying to make is when you give your brain the opportunity to be bored, your imagination and things start to fill in, and you begin to engage in a way that maybe before. Yeah. Do you find that true?
That's definitely true.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, I find myself all the time, like, I know that people call them shower thoughts, but like, even when like I'm I think driving is probably one of the best things, especially for not necessarily for boredom, but like for getting those ideas or just, coming up with the things that you've been stuck on. Like, it's, I don't know. I find that to me that driving or even just sitting around outside, just alone with your thoughts, can definitely come up with creative ideas.
Yeah, and I feel like the smartphone has robbed us of so much of that, just like thinking time.
Yeah, where definitely.
I've definitely sat outside and I've just been thinking about something, and then my phone's inside, right, and my hand goes to my pocket, just kind of looking for it. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm out here, like you have these habits and things. So the smartphone, unfortunately, has just taken away so much of that time where you kind of, your brain flips over from being bored to being engaged with itself.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been wrestling with this with smartphones for a little bit, especially these past few months, and that like I kind of hate how dependent, not just me, but everyone has become on them. I know on the podcast a few months ago, maybe even longer than that, but we were talking about how, when the internet was first kind of getting started, I just remember kind of like I would have times that I would go on the internet. It's like I would hop on and check my email and browse the internet. Maybe like I'd check it at noon, and then again another time like before going to sleep or something. And now I'm checking it all the time, and I realize I'm like refreshing the same website 50 times before 1:00 in the afternoon, and I'm like, this is insane. Like it used to feel more special.
What's sadder than closing a tab and then opening, like typing in that same address and opening that tab back up, being like, wait, I was just.
Yeah, it drives me crazy. And then like I sometimes like just almost purposely like will try to remember something without going to my phone and looking it up. Or even recently I've been having this weird thing where it's like, now when you're filling out like a form or an application or something on your phone, a lot of times it'll autofill for you. And like recently I've been forcing myself not to press the thing to autofill. I'm like, no, I'm typing this myself. Like I feel like I'm losing my typing skills. Like I want to make sure I could still spell things. I don't want it to do this stuff for me all the time, So everything is so automatic and automated. It just drives me crazy.
I was writing an email in Google and it auto-completed the sentence, and it wasn't exactly what I wanted to say, but it was close enough. I was like, yeah. And I kept going and I was like, no. That's not what you wanted to say. Take the 5 seconds and go fix that.
Yeah, seriously. So like it's this whole thing, to bring it back to movies and film and stuff too. Like it makes me mad. Like when I'm watching a TV show or whatever, and I catch myself, I'm like, Bryce, you're gonna enjoy this show so much more if you just focus on it and stop grabbing your phone or trying to multitask or look at email at the same time. And so like smartphones are great, but I kind of hate how connected we are. Like it sort of drives me nuts.
It's why I don't have an Apple Watch. Like I don't need that one more point of like constant contact with my device.
Yeah.
Not that I'm knocking them. I'm sure people use them and love them, but I feel like AOL is how I started, accessing the internet, and that barrier of entry, people laugh and joke about, the sound but like that, whatever, even if it's 60 seconds of waiting to get onto it was enough to go, well, I'm going to do everything I need to do and then walk away, and I'm not going to. And I think that if we just had that versus the always on, that would be enough to kind of stop us.
I think it makes it more memorable too. Like I said, that was kind of like, it was a part of my day that I looked forward to. Now like I find myself getting almost kind of depressed, or just like when I know I've been on my phone too much, I'm just like, this is too much. I need to stop. Like, and I'll even try to like, force myself to like, okay, well, I'll do what I used to do. Maybe I will only check like the websites that I like to go to, or the internet in general. Like I'll check it at noon, and then I'll check it again like at some point before I go to sleep, and then that'll be it. But the temptation is it's hard, man. It's too hard.
Really, and it's when you are forced to not have it. I was in India recently and we had no connectivity, and like we had a hotspot that barely worked, and it was so and I remember just like sitting there next to the hotspot, walking around trying to get the internet.
Yeah.
And, getting so frustrated. And when I finally just released myself from that, it was like, you know what? I just don't have it. I can't connect to people. It became this, like, it felt so freeing. Like, wow, I don't have to have it every time. I can walk out of the house without it. What? This is fantastic.
Yeah, it's the best. Like, there is something kind of cool about not always being accessible and reachable. And it's like you left and you came back, and like, and then sometimes too, when I realize I've forgotten my phone or something, it's also kind of stressful too, because you come back and it's like, oh my God, why do I have 3 missed calls and 50 text messages? Like, what's happening? But I would rather be more disconnected, I think. I read about some people that do like not social distancing, that do they detox from their phone, basically, like a social media detox. And I'm not on social media personally. It's just not my thing. But just in general, like I've wanted to implement that, a few times, because I just like it does feel good when you take a break from yourself.
A good friend of mine just left the industry. He was an editor, and he was at the top of his game, working for one of the major post houses here in Los Angeles, and he was miserable, and he didn't want to do this anymore, and he went back to school to become a therapist. Mm-hmm. And he said right now is like, the gold rush for mental anguish because of social media and the connectivity that we have. And he said that we're going to look back at this time when we have a more thorough understanding of mental health as, similar to how we view cigarettes now.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Where like everybody just was smoking and it was fine, and doctors would be like, these don't irritate your throat. Is that, like you've seen those old ads with the doctor. Yeah. And I think that that's what's going to happen is we're going to, we grew up with it, and it kind of came on slowly, and then it got to this critical mass moment where people are starting to see like, man, this can be destructive. I mean, it also is constructive. I mean, you and I are having, what did you say about Ryan, meeting through the internet and
Yeah.
having this conversation through the internet? It is a complete double-edged sword. And I think humans just have this hard time with gray area. This is bad or this is good, but when you look at a tool and you say, well, it has positive and negative things, people it's hard to make this parameter stick because you have to decide what's good and what's bad.
Yeah. And I think it's especially difficult when, it's up to you to make that decision. It's a lot easier when, like you have no choice. Like, again, you were talking about, the barrier of entry, with the internet at the beginning. It's like, okay, well, I come on to do this. And in some cases, AOL, if you didn't have unlimited, you only had X amount of hours to be on it. And it's just like, I almost want that to happen again, just because I think it'll make me focus on other things.
Yeah. And I think you're going to see a rise in all of this stuff, where, vacations where, you check your phone, at the door and devices and programs that limit this and that and lock you out. And, I think that you're going to see a rise in that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Rick.
I was going to say, I know most of the time where we do get our phones locked up is when we used to go to, me and Bryce used to go to a lot of the test screenings, and they, of course, want you to leave your phones in your car. And, we do that, and then when we go, we're waiting in line. I know every once in a while we're always checking our pocket, like to see, oh, well, let's look this up. Oh, wait, we can't.
Have you guys ever had the phantom vibration where you're like,
yeah.
It's like, what is happening? I got an iPad for the first time not that long ago, and I was setting it up, and you have to connect your iCloud, and I had my laptop out, and I opened my phone, and I had the TV on in the background, and my wife walked in, and she's like, "Are you quadruple screening?" And I was like, "Oh God."
Seriously, it's an addiction for sure.
Yeah. But again, like this time when you realize, you check your phone and you don't have 400 missed calls, you're like, "Oh, it's okay. I can walk away and I can focus on other stuff." And yeah, again, I think being bored is so important to being a person. I think I don't know, have you guys been having crazy dreams during this thing?
Oh, definitely.
For sure.
I have. I've been attacked by tigers like 3 times.
Have you watched Tiger King?
I have not. That's the thing.
Yeah, I've been having insane dreams, and I think it's just the brain going like, I need to process, this just being stuck in this house and not having other input and things.
Right. Yeah, you're mentioning boredom being a good thing. I think boredom is a good thing, but I think even another way of putting it is, to me, it's hard to even fathom when people say that they're bored, because I feel like there's so many things at our fingertips that you could be doing, and it's just a matter of motivating yourself to do it. Like it kind of stresses me out, like, because I know there's some people that are going stir crazy, and they're just like, oh, I can't work, and what am I doing, and what do I do with myself? And I'm just like, we have a friend, Rick and I have a mutual friend. And I think it's funny because like he's still working as normal as well. And, his weekend comes and like he can't, you're really not supposed to go out. And so like I think we were all talking to him or whatever, and he was on like the first day of his weekend, and then he was saying, he's like, yeah, by tomorrow, like I don't know what I'm gonna do with myself. I think I'm gonna go stir crazy. I'm like, dude, life isn't that much different for you right now. You've been going to work every single day, and like by day 2 of your weekend, you're going to be going kind of stir crazy. I'm like, come on, like there's so many things that you could be doing. It doesn't, I don't know. I guess I'm somebody that really doesn't have an issue with being inside, so like it doesn't bother me, and I get that affects some people, but like people that have that mentality of just like they always need to be moving or busy with something, like it just kind of stresses me out.
Well, again, I think we're trained to be that way, like the hustle, the grind, everybody, you got to be, if you're not doing the thing 24/7, then you don't really want it bad enough. And I just think that's a destructive mentality.
I do too, for sure.
I know that Neil Gaiman, the writer, has a practice where when he goes to write, he has, his book and he writes longhand, and he says that he goes into this like gazebo. He says, I can do anything I want. I can write, or I can sit there quietly and think about whatever I want, or, look, but like, that's it. That's the 2 options he has. And he says he starts off by sitting there and just thinking and like looking at the squirrels and the birds and the flowers. And he's like, all right, I'm bored. I'm going to start writing. It's way more interesting to be writing. And it's like, that's all it takes is just that like little bit of like I'm surrounded by books I don't read and DVDs I haven't seen in years. And all of a sudden, when you get bored, you're like, I'm going to pull that thing off the shelf, and you're now in a whole different world. It's kind of amazing, that little nudge of boredom.
Yeah, definitely.
That's pretty cool. I always thought about like doing that as well too. Just like getting in a hotel, everything's off except for my laptop, no Wi-Fi connected, and just start writing. Or be bored. I thought about doing that same exact thing too.
Yeah, and I think that does work. The fact that you're not saying I have to write constantly. You're saying, all right, I've got two options. I can either do nothing or I can write. Eventually, you're going to want to write. And
exactly.
And so many writers talk about that. Aronofsky does it. He calls it the muscle draft, where he just locks himself away and he pounds through it, in a week or two. I think Paul Thomas Anderson wrote Magnolia while he was locked in, William H. Macy's cabin because he saw a snake outside and he didn't want to go out, and so like, I'm just gonna finish this thing. And yeah, it's there's so many stories of that.
I listen to a lot of podcasts like about screenwriting and all that too, because that was the point of my interest as well too, growing up, and and wanting to write a movie or for television or something, and I never got to that point. I ended up becoming a podcaster. Here we are. But still, even till now, like I still write, and it might not be something that's like 120 pages, but like it's still something that's enjoyable.
Absolutely. And I sensed a little twinge when you said, I'm a podcaster. Here we are. But if you think about some of the best films that have come out in the last 10 years, a lot of those have been inspired by conversations that started on a podcast. I mean, the Farewell jumps out at me as one that was, I think in This American Life Story or something. And,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And I love the opening to Wes Anderson's Grand Budapest Hotel, where it's, God, I forget the actor's name, but he's sitting there and he's directly addressing the audience, the camera. And he says, people ask me where I get my ideas, and I find that if you just, are quiet and listen to people's stories, they'll bring them to you.
Oh man, I have to watch that again.
Yeah, and it's like it's changed how I approach, because I used to, feel like you have to have this struggle and this pain and you have to dig deep and all that stuff. And I still believe that you have to be honest and you have to emotionally connect with the story and you have to entertain your audience and never be boring and all that stuff. But I've just started listening more and thinking about what I'm hearing and why that story is interesting to me. And that's been a little bit of a change in my return to, more narrative writing.
Yeah, I love the process. I mean, I got my whiteboard as well too, where I write down all my ideas down and eventually put it together. But I talking to you and to Ryan and like some of the other guests we've had on the show, like, I love listening to other people's stories. And this is why, I love the podcasting platform and the internet, because of all the different stories that people we can meet and the stories we can hear.
Yeah. I mean, I think I listen in terms of hours, I probably listen to more podcasts than films that I watch,
Oh, wow.
Minute to minute. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I mean, just because like it's, you could always have a podcast playing in the background or take it with you, where you have to focus more on a film because you have to watch it. So that makes sense. That definitely makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think just, I think a well-rounded storyteller should listen to nonfiction and fiction and be learning something new. And, I listen to a podcast about, couples in therapy, and I listen to a podcast about writing music and things like that. And all of that informs, whatever, the human experience, the human story. And hopefully some of that trickles into, whatever medium I'm trying to work in next.
Yeah, definitely.
With being, locked up, like, were there any movies? I'm just curious, any movies you've recently watched, maybe that you've kind of loved?
I was a good question.
Well, I did see Tiger King.
I did too.
And that's its own thing. In terms of features, again, I've been sort of just trying to, those ones that you're always like, I'm going to watch that, and then you don't.
Yeah.
So like a Portrait of a Lady on Fire, I just watched recently. I thought it was absolutely gorgeous. Loving Vincent had been something I've been wanting to watch, which is the Vincent Van Gogh one that's been like completely painted.
Oh,
I've definitely heard of that. I haven't seen it though.
Absolutely incredible. The series on Amazon Prime called Tales from the Loop, very much in my wheelhouse, sci-fi kind of fairy tale-ish, cool little stories. That's kind of what I've been jiving on recently.
Okay, very cool. What about any recent movies or anything before this whole thing started that you caught this year?
I'm trying to remember what came out this year. It feels like a lifetime ago, right? Like
it does. The last movie I saw in theater, well, and Rick, you too, was Invisible Man. I
did see that. Yeah, I thought that was pretty good. It was a nice B movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just rewatched The Lighthouse, which I thought I love that film. I know it's probably pretty polarizing.
No, I actually think I haven't seen it, but I think Dan Herman really liked that movie a lot, if I remember correctly.
I just saw a film called Cosmos, which was made for like a feature that was made for $7,000 and took these guys 5 years and 1 camera and 3 lights and.
I got it.
Wow.
Yeah, incredible. Like for what they had and what they were able to pull off. And then my collaborator and friend Jerry Spears, his feature that he just finished got released on Prime. It's called We Take the Low Road, and it's very topical. It's about a healthcare company that is taking advantage of people, and they're kind of getting fed up, and they're capturing and murdering the CEOs of these healthcare.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Revenge tale. Yeah. But yeah, that's what I've been watching.
All right, cool. Greg, I really appreciate you coming on the show. Is there anything that you want to, I don't know, plug or talk about, that you're working on, or let everyone know, or obviously also, give your social media or anything else? This is the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So Gone, which is the new music video by Sophie Strauss that we talked about a little bit on the show, that's available everywhere online. A short film that has been making its rounds called When You Know, a brief and thorough investigation into mysterious sources of glitter, is just nearing its festival run. So we'll be putting that out online probably in the next few weeks. And this animated project is called O Telescope, We Sing Your Praise Eternal. It'll probably be done in about a year, but when it's done, I'd love to talk with you guys again about it.
Yeah, definitely. It was very fun talking with you. We'd love to have you back on again.
Yeah, and you can find me on, I'm on Twitter and stuff, but I'm really probably most active on Instagram at Gregory J.M. Kasunich. And that's, a lot of stuff I'm doing and working on, I'm posting about there. And then my website is just gregorykasunich.com. And has all my work. So
awesome.
We'll put all those in the notes as well too. So
yeah, for sure.
Appreciate that. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you guys. Really nice.
Yeah, definitely. It was very fun talking with you. All right. Well, this has been, we've been on here talking with Gregory Kasunich for the last almost 2 hours. Wow. Hour and a half, hour, 47 minutes. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I know we haven't done a show proper for a little bit. I'm not sure when we will do that. It wasn't our intention to go on a break. I'm sure we'll come back. Just follow us on our social media at Some Shit We Like, and we will keep you informed. But for now, Gregory, thanks for joining us.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. And Rick, anything else?
That was Some Shit We Like.